The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Cedar Ridge as Clara Whitmore stood before Judge Harlan's desk. Her black morning dress a stark contrast against the faded wood paneling of the courthouse. 3 weeks had passed since they'd buried Sheriff Thomas Whitmore, and the town's patience for her widowhood had already worn thin. Mrs. Whitmore. Judge Harlan's voice carried the weight of finality. The law is clear. A woman cannot hold property without a male guardian. Your late husband's land reverts to the territory unless you remarry within the month. Clara's gloved hands tightened on her reticule. Judge Harlan, surely there must be. There isn't. The judge's weathered face showed no sympathy. The county needs that land productive, not sitting idle while you mourn. The town council has already found you a suitable match. Behind her, she heard the courthouse door creak open. Heavy boots crossed the wooden floor with measured steps. Clara didn't need to turn to know who had entered. The sudden hush that fell over the room told her everything. Eli Danner. She'd seen him before. Of course, everyone in Cedar Ridge knew the silent cowboy who'd worked for her husband, though few dared speak to him directly. Tall and broad-shouldered, with eyes the color of winter sky and a face that rarely showed emotion. Eli carried himself with the careful movements of a man who'd learned to survive by staying invisible. Mr. Danner has agreed to the arrangement. Judge Harlan continued, shuffling papers on his desk. He's a man of property now. Your late husband left him 40 acres in his will. Combined with your holdings, it'll make a respectable spread. Clara finally turned to face the man who would be her husband. Eli stood near the door, his worn Stetson in his hands, dark hair falling across his forehead. A thin scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, a souvenir from whatever life he'd lived before coming to Cedar Ridge. His clothes were clean but well worn, canvas pants, a blue work shirt, leather vest. Everything about him spoke of function over form. Their eyes met briefly. His were unreadable, giving away nothing of what he thought about this forced union. Clara wondered if her own face betrayed the mixture of fear, anger, and resignation churning in her stomach. I don't require a husband, Clara said, though she knew the words were futile. I can manage the ranch myself. No, you can't. Reverend Pemberton had entered behind Eli, his sanctimonious expression making Clara's skin crawl. It's unseemly. A young woman alone on that property. People talk, Mrs. Whitmore. They whisper about why the sheriff was out that night, why he was alone when the Wallace gang found him. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Clara felt her cheeks burn. How dare you suggest? I suggest nothing, the Reverend interrupted smoothly. But a proper marriage will quiet such speculation. Mr. Danner is willing. You should be grateful. Grateful. The word tasted bitter. Clara looked at Eli again. He hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. Did he want this any more than she did? Or was he simply following orders, as he'd always done for Thomas? When? She asked quietly, defeat settling over her shoulders like a heavy shawl. Tomorrow morning, Judge Harlan said. 10 o'clock. Just a simple ceremony. No need for anything elaborate given the circumstances. The circumstances. Her husband murdered, her reputation questioned, her future decided by men who saw her as property to be transferred from one guardian to another. Clara's spine stiffened. Fine, she said. But I have conditions. Judge Harlan's eyebrows rose. You're hardly in a position to negotiate, Mrs. Whitmore. Nevertheless, Clara turned to Eli. I'll need to speak with Mr. Danner, privately. For the first time, Eli moved, shifting his weight slightly. When he spoke, his voice was low and rough, as if he didn't use it often. Outside, it wasn't a question. Clara nodded and followed him out of the courthouse, aware of the eyes watching them through windows and doorways. News traveled fast in Cedar Ridge, and by evening, everyone would know about tomorrow's wedding. They stopped near the water trough outside Morrison's general store. Eli leaned against the hitching post, finally meeting her gaze properly. Up close, she could see lines around his eyes, not from laughter, but from squinting against sun and wind. He couldn't be more than 35, but his face carried the weight of hard years. "You don't want this," Clara said. It wasn't a question. "Neither do you." His voice held no emotion, just stated fact. Then why agree? Eli was quiet for a long moment, his eyes drifting to the horizon where dust devils danced in the heat. "I owed your husband. He gave me work when no one else would. Didn't ask questions about my past. This is how I pay that debt. By marrying his widow? By keeping you safe." The words were simple, but Clara heard the weight behind them. "Tom worried about you, especially near the end. Said there were rumors about the Wallace gang moving closer, that they had eyes on the ranch. He made me promise." Eli stopped abruptly, jaw tightening. "Promise what?" "To look after you if something happened." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Thomas had known, somehow. He'd known danger was coming and had tried to protect her even in death. "He never told me. He wouldn't have wanted to worry you." They stood in silence, watching a freight wagon rumble past. Finally, Clara spoke. "My conditions are simple. This will be a marriage in name only. You'll have your room, I'll have mine. I'll cook and keep house. You'll work the land. We'll be business partners." Eli nodded once. "Fair enough. And I won't be treated as property. I may have to marry you by law, but I won't be owned." Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, perhaps. "I don't own things that can think for themselves. Mrs. Whitmore." It was an odd way to phrase it, but Clara understood. She extended her hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Eli shook it. His palm was calloused, his grip firm but not crushing. "Tomorrow, then," she said. "Tomorrow." Clara turned to leave, then paused. "Why do they fear you? The townspeople?" Eli's expression didn't change, but his eyes grew distant. "Because they're smart enough to fear what they don't understand." It wasn't really an answer, but Clara didn't press. Tomorrow she'd be married to this stranger, this man with secrets written in the scars on his skin and the shadows in his eyes. Tonight. She had one last evening as Thomas Whitmore's widow. She walked home alone, back straight despite the weight of gossip and judgment pressing down on her. Behind her, she felt Eli watching, and wondered if he was already keeping that promise to her dead husband. The house felt emptier than usual when she arrived. Thomas's chair sat by the fireplace, his pipe still on the side table where he'd left it that last morning. Clara touched it gently, then moved through the rooms like a ghost, memorizing each space as it was now, before another man's presence changed it forever. She prepared a simple supper but couldn't eat. Instead, she sat at the kitchen table with Thomas's old journal, reading his careful notes about cattle prices and weather patterns. On the last page, dated just 2 days before his death, she found something that made her breath catch. "Eli Danner is a good man, despite what others say. If anything happens to me, he'll do right by Clara. I've made sure of it." Clara closed the journal and pressed it against her chest. "Oh, Thomas, even in this, you were trying to protect me." As darkness fell, she prepared for bed in the room she'd shared with her husband for 8 years. Tomorrow night, she'd sleep here alone while a stranger occupied the spare room down the hall. It was better than losing everything, she told herself. Better than becoming a charity case or worse. But as she lay in the dark, listening to coyotes howl in the distance, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow would change more than just her name. Something in Eli Danner's eyes, that careful watchfulness, that controlled stillness, spoke of a man who'd learned to survive in a hard world by becoming harder. What kind of man was she binding herself to, and what secrets lay behind that scarred, silent face? The questions followed her into uneasy dreams, where Thomas's voice whispered warnings she couldn't quite hear, and pale blue eyes watched her from the shadows. Tomorrow would come soon enough. Tonight, Clara Whitmore mourned not just her husband, but the life she'd thought she'd have. A life that had died with him on that dark road 3 weeks ago, leaving her at the mercy of laws written by men who'd never loved and lost, who saw her as a problem to be solved rather than a person to be saved. The wedding ring felt foreign on Clara's finger as she stood at the mercantile counter, waiting for Mr. Morrison to finish wrapping her flower. 2 weeks had passed since the ceremony, if one could call that brief. Joyless exchange of vows in front of Judge Harlan a ceremony. Now she wore the title of Mrs. Danner like an ill-fitting coat, neither comfortable nor truly hers. "That'll be $2, Mrs. Danner." Morrison's emphasis on her new name carried an edge of disapproval. Behind her, Clara heard Mrs. Hutchins whisper to her companion, the words "shameful" and "too soon" drifting across the store like poisonous smoke. Clara placed the money on the counter with steady hands, though inside she wanted to flee. "Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Heard your new husband's been keeping to himself out at the ranch." Morrison's tone suggested this was somehow Clara's fault. Man needs to be social, part of the community, unless he's got reasons for hiding. "Mr. Danner is working. The ranch requires attention." Clara kept her voice level, though heat rose in her cheeks. "I'm sure it does." Mrs. Hutchins had approached, her pinched face radiating false concern. "Such a tragedy about dear Thomas. He was so well regarded, everyone trusted him completely." The implication hung heavy, unlike your current husband. Clara gathered her purchases. "Good day, ladies." She'd made it halfway to the door when Mrs. Hutchins' parting shot found its mark. "Some say it's curious. A woman losing one husband to violence and taking another so quick makes people wonder what really happened out on that road." Clara's steps faltered but didn't stop. She pushed through the door into the harsh afternoon sun. Her packages clutched against her chest like armor. The walk to where she'd tied her horse felt endless, every window along Main Street holding watching eyes, judging faces. She'd just secured the flour in her saddlebags when she heard the commotion from the saloon. Raised voices, the crash of breaking glass. Then Big Jim Sawyer stumbled out onto the boardwalk, blood streaming from his nose. "You stay away from there! Danner!" Big Jim shouted back through the saloon doors. "You hear me? That woman don't need your kind sniffing around." Clara's blood chilled. Eli emerged from the saloon, his movements unhurried despite the tension crackling in the air. His shirt was untorn, his face unmarked. Whatever had happened, Big Jim had come out the worse for it. Their eyes met across the street. For a moment, Clara saw something raw in Eli's expression before his usual mask slipped back into place. He touched the brim of his hat to her, a gesture so formally polite it made her heart ache unexpectedly, then walked toward the livery stable without a backward glance. "That's your husband now," someone muttered behind her. "The killer McCready brought to town." Clara mounted her horse and rode home, back straight despite the weight of their stares. The 5-mile journey to the ranch gave her too much time to think. What had Big Jim meant? What woman was he talking about? The ranch house stood silent when she arrived. No smoke from the chimney despite the approaching evening chill. Eli's horse was already in the corral, but there was no sign of him in the barn or the house. Clara unloaded her supplies and started supper, falling into the routine that had become her refuge these past weeks. Cook, clean, retire to her room. Minimal interaction with the strangers she'd married. Eli appeared at sunset, entering through the kitchen door as quietly as always. Dust covered his clothes, and she noticed torn fabric at his shoulder, a dark stain that might be blood. "You're hurt," she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. He glanced at his shoulder as if just noticing. "Caught it on wire. It's nothing. It needs cleaning." Clara was already moving to the cabinet where she kept medical supplies. "Sit. I can manage. Sit." Her tone brooked no argument, surprising them both. After a moment's hesitation, Eli pulled out a chair and sat. Clara brought water, clean cloths, and the bottle of whiskey Thomas had kept for medicinal purposes. "You'll need to remove your shirt." His hand stilled on the buttons. "I said I can manage, and I said it needs cleaning, unless you'd prefer infection." Their eyes met in a brief battle of wills before Eli resumed unbuttoning. When he shrugged off the shirt, Clara had to suppress a gasp. His back and chest were a map of violence, old scars crossing newer ones. Some from bullets, others from knives or whips. Whatever life Eli had lived before Cedar Ridge, it had been written in pain on his skin. She cleaned the fresh wound in silence, aware of the way he tensed under her touch. Muscles coiled as if ready to flee or fight. The gash wasn't deep, but it was longer than she'd expected. Running from his shoulder blade almost to his spine. "This wasn't from fence wire," she said quietly. "No. Big Jim? He had friends." Eli's voice held no emotion. "They thought 3-on-1 might improve their odds. Did it? No." Clara secured the bandage, then stepped back. Eli pulled his shirt on quickly, and she noticed how he favored his left side, another hurt he hadn't mentioned. "Why were they angry with you?" She returned the medical supplies to their cabinet, not looking at him. "Big Jim's been coming around the ranch when I'm not here." Clara's hands stilled. "What?" "Checking on you. He said, making sure you're treated proper." Understanding dawned, bringing heat to her cheeks. "He has no right." "That's what I told him." Eli stood, testing his shoulder. "He disagreed. I convinced him otherwise." The thought of Big Jim Sawyer checking on her made Clara's skin crawl. She'd noticed his lingering looks at Thomas's funeral, the way he'd tried to corner her afterward with offers of help. "I can handle Jim Sawyer. Not if he brings friends." Eli moved toward the door, then paused. "There's a rifle in the barn, wrapped in oilcloth under the feed bins. Thomas kept it there. You know how to use it?" "Yes. Keep it in the house." He was gone before she could respond, disappearing into the growing darkness. Clara served the supper she'd prepared, eating alone as had become her custom. But tonight, she found herself listening for the sound of Eli's footsteps, wondering where he went when he left the house each evening. An hour later, she heard him in the spare room, Thomas's old study that Eli had claimed as his own. Unable to concentrate on her mending, Clara made a decision that surprised her. She prepared a plate from the leftovers and knocked on his door. "Come." Eli sat at the small desk, writing in a leather journal by lamplight. He looked up, clearly surprised to see her. "You missed supper," she said, setting the plate on the desk. "I don't—" He stopped, seeming to reconsider. "Thank you." Clara noticed what he'd been writing, rows of numbers and notations about cattle, feed costs, market prices. "You're planning for winter. Someone needs to." He set down his pen. "Your husband was a good man, but he wasn't much for ranch work. The herd's thin. Fences need repair before the snow comes. Thomas tried his best." "I know." Eli's voice softened slightly. "But trying and doing are different things. You'll need every head of cattle to make it through winter. And right now, you're losing them to weak fences and poor grazing." Clara sank into the chair across from him, suddenly exhausted. "I don't know anything about ranching. Thomas handled all that." "You'll learn." "Will you teach me?" The question hung between them. Eli studied her face, and she wondered what he saw, the sheriff's pampered widow or something more. "If you want to learn, yes, I do." Clara stood to leave, then turned back. "Eli, what Big Jim said about you being a killer. It's true." His voice was flat, matter of fact. "I've killed men, some for money, some for survival. That's what Big Jim meant, what they all whisper about. The gunslinger McCready brought to town and your husband was fool enough to hire." Clara absorbed this confession, surprised to find she wasn't afraid. "But you're not that man anymore, aren't I?" He gestured to his bandaged shoulder. "I put 3 men down today without reaching for my gun. Violence is what I know. Mrs. Danner. It's what I'm good at. Pretending otherwise doesn't change the truth." "Then why stay? Why agree to this marriage if you believe you're so unsuited to peaceful life?" Eli was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of old pain. Maybe a man gets tired of being what he's good at. Maybe he wants to try being something else, even if he's bound to fail. Clara felt something shift in her chest. Not quite sympathy, but understanding. "Then we're both trying to be something we're not. I'm pretending to be a proper ranch wife when I know nothing about it. And you're pretending to be a farmer when you're really a warrior." "Warriors have honor," Eli said quietly. I was just a man with a fast gun and a willingness to use it. Was, Clara repeated. Past tense. Their eyes met across the small room, and for a moment, the air felt charged with possibility. Then Eli looked away, picking up his pen. Thank you for the supper. Dismissed. Clara returned to her room, but that night, she lay awake thinking about the scars on Eli's back, the careful way he moved through the world, the loneliness that seemed to wrap around him like a second shadow. She thought about Big Jim's possessive attention and Eli's violent response to it. He'd defended her, this stranger she'd been forced to marry, this man with blood on his hands and gentleness in his touch when he thought no one was looking. He'd fought for her honor against men who saw her as available simply because her husband was dead. Outside, a wolf howled in the distance, and another answered. Clara pulled her quilts higher, wondering if Eli was awake too, listening to the wild calling to wild. Tomorrow, she decided, she would ask him to show her the ranch, to teach her what she needed to know. If they were both pretending to be something they weren't, perhaps they could pretend together. And maybe, in time, the pretense would become truth. The first riders appeared at dawn, their silhouettes dark against the pale morning sky. Clara spotted them from the kitchen window where she was preparing breakfast, and her blood ran cold. 3 men, moving with the casual confidence of those who expected no resistance. Eli, she called, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. He appeared in the doorway instantly, already dressed, as if he'd been waiting. His eyes followed her gaze to the window, and his expression hardened. Get the rifle. Clara retrieved the Winchester from behind the door where she'd kept it since Eli's warning. When she returned, he was strapping on a gun belt she'd never seen before, worn leather holding a Colt .45 that looked as much a part of him as his own hand. You know them? She asked. Maybe. He checked the cylinder with practiced efficiency. Stay inside, no matter what happens. Stay inside. Eli! But he was already gone, stepping out onto the porch with that same unhurried gait she'd seen at the saloon. Clara positioned herself at the window, rifle ready, heart pounding. The riders stopped just beyond the gate. The man in front pushed back his hat, revealing a face marked by sun and violence. Well, Eli Danner. Heard you'd gone respectable. Wade. Eli's voice carried no surprise. You're a long way from Texas, following opportunities. Wade's grin was all teeth, no warmth. Heard about a sweet little setup here. Sheriff's dead. Widow's got land. Money. Then I hear she up and married herself a gunslinger. Had to come see if it was true. It's true. Now move on. Wade laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. That's no way to treat old friends. Eli, we rode together, remember? That job in Amarillo, the stage outside Fort Worth? You weren't so high and mighty then. Clara's hands tightened on the rifle. This was Eli's past, come calling with familiar faces and shared sins. That was a different life, Eli said. Was it? Wade leaned forward in his saddle. Because the way I remember it, you owed us. We saved your hide in Laredo, and you lit out before the split. Some might call that stealing. Some might call it surviving. The man to Wade's left, younger, nervous, had been scanning the windows. His eyes met Clara's, and he grinned. That her? The sheriff's widow? Pretty little thing. Bet she doesn't know what she married. Eli shifted slightly, a minimal movement that nonetheless changed everything about his stance. My wife's not part of this conversation. Your wife. Wade savored the words like whiskey. Eli Danner with a wife. What's next? You gonna take up farming? Go to church on Sundays? If that's what it takes. Takes for what? To be left alone. Wade's humor evaporated. You can't just walk away. Eli, nobody leaves the life. You know that. I did. No, you just stopped for a while. But we both know what you are. What you'll always be. That woman in there, she's gonna learn it too. Probably the hard way. Clara saw Eli's hand move, not to his gun, but to rest casually on the porch railing. Anyone else might have missed the tension in his shoulders. the way his weight shifted to the balls of his feet. "You need to leave. Wade. Now." "Or what? You'll gun us down in front of your pretty wife? Show her what kind of man she's sharing a bed with? We're done here." Wade studied him for a long moment. "Maybe we are. For now. But this ain't over. Eli, you've got debts, and one way or another, they get paid." He wheeled his horse around, his companions following. They rode off slowly, making a show of it, and Clara didn't breathe properly until they disappeared over the ridge. Eli remained on the porch, still as stone, watching the horizon. Clara set the rifle aside and stepped outside, approaching him carefully. "Old friends?" she asked. "Old mistakes?" He turned to her, and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected. Shame. "You should go back inside." "No." He blinked at her directness. "I want to know." Clara said, "If I'm going to have men like that showing up at my door, I deserve to know why." Eli was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, 5 years ago, I rode with Wade Garrison's gang. We robbed stages, banks, whatever paid. I was good with a gun, and that's all that mattered to them. What changed? Laredo. We hit a bank, but someone tipped off the Rangers. It was a massacre. Women, children caught in the crossfire. I saw a little girl." He stopped, jaw clenching. "She was maybe 6 years old. Took a bullet meant for me. Died in the street while her mother screamed." Clara's heart ached at the pain in his voice. "I left that night, took my cut and rode out. Wade figures I owe them for saving my life in the shootout, that I broke the code by leaving." Eli finally looked at her. "He's probably right. You couldn't stay after that." "Couldn't I? The others did. Wade stepped over that girl's body to get to the horses." His laugh was bitter. "I'm no better than them. Mrs. Danner. I just got squeamish at the wrong moment." "The right moment," Clara corrected softly. "Your conscience woke up at exactly the right moment." "Conscience." He said the word like it was foreign. "Is that what you call it when you're haunted by a child's face every time you close your eyes?" Without thinking, Clara reached out and touched his arm. He flinched but didn't pull away. "I call it human. Humans don't do what I've done. Humans do exactly what you've done, good and terrible things, sometimes in the same day. The difference is whether they can face it, whether they try to change." Eli stared at her hand on his arm, as if it were a puzzle he couldn't solve. "Your husband would be spinning in his grave, knowing I told you this." "Thomas is dead," Clara said gently. "And he trusted you enough to ask you to protect me. That means something. It means he was desperate, or that he saw what I'm starting to see, which is—" Clara considered her words carefully. "A man trying to be better than his worst day." Eli turned away, but not before she caught a glimpse of raw emotion on his face. "You don't know what you're saying." "Don't I? You think you're the only one with regrets? The only one who's done things they're ashamed of? What could you possibly have done that compares?" The question hung in the morning air. Clara withdrew her hand, wrapping her arms around herself. "I wished him dead sometimes. Thomas, is that shocking enough for you? He was a good man, but he was distant, cold, more married to his badge than to me. Some nights I'd lie there beside him and wish I were anywhere else. With anyone else." She expected judgment, but Eli's expression held only understanding. "Then he was killed, and everyone acted like I'd lost some great love. The grieving widow. They called me, but I was relieved. Eli. For one terrible moment when they told me, I was relieved." Tears stung her eyes. What kind of woman feels relief when her husband dies? An honest one. The simple acceptance in his voice broke something in her. The tears came then, hot and sudden. She turned away, embarrassed, but Eli caught her shoulder gently. "Don't," he said. "Don't apologize for truth. Everyone thinks I'm this perfect widow, but I'm a fraud. I'm human." He echoed her earlier word back to her. Just human. They stood there in the morning light, two damaged people sharing their broken pieces. Finally, Clara wiped her eyes and managed a watery smile. "Quite a pair, aren't we? The killer and the fraud." Former killer, Eli corrected, and she was surprised to catch a hint of dark humor in his voice. I'm reformed now. Remember? Of course. How could I forget? And I'm the devoted widow. Devoted? He tested the word. That what you're calling this arrangement? What would you call it? He considered. Practical? Romantic? Necessary? Flattering, but she was almost smiling now. What about unexpected? That works. He paused. Clara? It was the first time he'd used her given name, and something fluttered in her chest. Yes? Wade will be back, him or others like him. This life I'm trying to leave. It doesn't let go easy. Then we'll face it when it comes. We? Did you think I'd run? Leave you to handle it alone? She lifted her chin. I may be a fraud of a widow, but I'm no coward. Something shifted in Eli's expression, a softening around his eyes, a slight relaxation of his perpetual guard. No, he said quietly. You're no coward. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and they both looked to the darkening sky. The storm that had been building for days was finally arriving. We should get the animals secured, Eli said, shifting back to practical matters. Show me what to do. He looked surprised. You want to help? I told you I want to learn. Might as well start with storm preparations. They worked together through the morning, Eli teaching her how to check the barn for weak spots, how to ensure the horses had adequate shelter, how to secure anything that might become dangerous in high winds. His instructions were patient, thorough, and Clara found herself enjoying the work despite the circumstances. By the time the first fat raindrops began to fall, they'd battened down everything that needed securing. They ran for the house as the sky opened up, arriving breathless and already soaking. I'll stoke the fire, Clara said, shivering. I'll check the roof for leaks. They separated to their tasks, but the house felt different now, less like two strangers sharing space and more like something else. Partners. Maybe, or at least two people beginning to understand each other. Later, as rain lashed against the windows and wind howled around the eaves, they sat in the kitchen sharing coffee and cold biscuits. The storm had knocked out any chance of hot food, but neither seemed to mind. Tell me about Texas, Clara said. Before Wade, before the gang. Eli was quiet, but it was a different quality of silence now, contemplative rather than closed off. Not much to tell. Father was a drunk. Mother died young. I learned to shoot to put food on the table. Found out I was good at it. Rest just happened. It didn't just happen. You made choices. Wrong ones. And then different ones. That matters. He studied her across the table. Why are you so determined to see good in me? Because you're so determined not to see it in yourself. Clara met his gaze steadily. And because I need to believe people can change, that we're more than our worst moments. For your sake or mine. Both. The storm raged outside, but inside the kitchen felt warm, safe. It was an illusion. Clara knew. Wade Garrison was out there somewhere, planning his return. The town still whispered about them. The past still haunted them both. But for now, for this moment, they had coffee and shelter and something that might, if they were very careful, grow into understanding. It wasn't love. It wasn't even friendship yet. But it was a beginning. The morning ride had become their routine over the past 2 weeks. Clara learning the boundaries of their land while Eli taught her to read the signs of weather, water, and wildlife. Today he'd promised to show her the hidden spring at the canyon's mouth, a secret water source Thomas had apparently never mentioned. Clara had grown comfortable in the saddle, her body adjusting to the rhythm of her mare's gait. She'd even started wearing Thomas's old work clothes, modified to fit, scandalous by town standards, but practical for ranch work. Eli had raised an eyebrow the first time he'd seen her in trousers, but said nothing. Storm coming, Eli said, studying the western horizon where clouds gathered like bruised flesh. Tonight? Maybe sooner. He turned his horse toward a line of cottonwoods. We should head back. But they'd barely gone 100 yards when Clara's mare suddenly shied, whinnying in distress. The snake appeared from nowhere, a rattler, coiled and angry. The mare reared, and Clara, caught off guard, felt herself falling. The ground rushed up hard. Pain exploded through her shoulder as she hit, rolling instinctively away from the horse's dancing hooves. She heard Eli shout, heard the sharp crack of his pistol. Then strong hands were lifting her, checking for breaks. "Where does it hurt?" "Shoulder, my ankle." She tried to sit up, gasped at the stabbing pain. "Don't move." His hands were gentle but efficient, probing for serious injury. "Shoulder's not broken, but that ankle's swelling fast. Can you ride?" "I think so." He helped her stand, taking most of her weight. The ankle screamed in protest, but she bit back the cry. Eli's arm around her waist was solid, warm, and she found herself leaning into him more than strictly necessary. "Easy," he murmured, guiding her to his horse. "I've got you." Getting her into the saddle was awkward, painful, but Eli was patient. He swung up behind her, one arm securing her against his chest while the other took the reins. Clara had never ridden like this, pressed against another person, feeling their heartbeat against her back. "Hold on," he said, his breath warm against her ear. The ride home seemed both eternal and too brief. Every movement sent pain through her injuries. But there was something else too, an awareness of Eli's solid presence, the way his body shielded hers from the rising wind. She could smell leather and soap and something uniquely him, masculine and earthy. By the time they reached the house, the first fat raindrops were falling. Eli dismounted and reached up for her, lifting her down as if she weighed nothing. For a moment, they stood frozen, her hands on his shoulders, his at her waist, rain beginning to fall around them. "Can you walk?" She tried to put weight on the ankle and nearly collapsed. Without hesitation, Eli swept her up in his arms, carrying her toward the house. Clara's protest died on her lips. There was something both thrilling and terrifying about being held like this, feeling the strength in his arms, the careful way he maneuvered through the door. He set her gently on the kitchen chair. "Let me see that ankle." Clara unlaced her boot, wincing as Eli helped to ease it off. The ankle was already purple and swollen. He fetched water and cloth, his touch surprisingly gentle as he wrapped it. "You've done this before," she observed. "Patch up injuries? More times than I can count." He secured the wrapping, though usually my own. "Thank you." "For what? Letting you fall off your horse?" "For catching me after." The words carried more weight than she'd intended. Eli looked up, meeting her eyes. Something passed between them, an acknowledgement of the growing tension, the awareness that had been building for weeks. He opened his mouth to speak. Then thunder crashed overhead, breaking the spell. "I should see to the horses," he said, standing abruptly. "Eli?" But he was already gone, leaving Clara alone with her racing heart and confused thoughts. When had things shifted? When had she started noticing the way his shirt pulled across his shoulders when he worked, or how his rare smiles transformed his face? She hobbled to her room to change out of her wet clothes, then made her way back to the kitchen. The storm had arrived in earnest now, turning the afternoon dark as evening. She just managed to light the stove when Eli returned, soaked to the skin. "There's stew from yesterday," she said, not looking at him. "And coffee. I'll change first." Clara busied herself heating the food, trying to ignore the sounds from his room, clothes hitting the floor, drawers opening. When he emerged, his hair was still damp, curling slightly at his collar. He'd put on a clean shirt but hadn't buttoned it completely, and she caught a glimpse of the scars she'd treated weeks ago, now healed to pink lines. They ate in companionable silence, the storm raging outside making the kitchen feel like a warm cave. When they finished, Eli insisted on cleaning up despite her protests about her ankle. "You should rest it," he said. "Keep it elevated. I'm not an invalid." "No, you're stubborn." But there was fondness in his voice. "Come on, the parlor fire's warmer." He helped her to the small sofa Thomas had bought but rarely used. Clara settled with her foot propped on a cushion, watching Eli add wood to the fire. The flames cast moving shadows on his face, highlighting the angles and planes she'd memorized without meaning to. "Tell me something," she said impulsively. "Something that isn't about violence or regret." He settled in the chair across from her, considering. "I had a dog once, when I was 8, maybe 9. Found him half-starved behind a saloon. Fed him scraps for weeks before he'd let me touch him." "What happened to him?" "My father shot him, said we couldn't afford another mouth." Eli's voice was matter-of-fact, but Clara heard the old pain underneath. "I buried him out behind the barn, made a marker from creek stones. Probably still there. I'm sorry. Long time ago." He stared into the fire. "What about you? Any pets growing up?" "A cat named Duchess. She was the terror of every mouse in Baltimore." Clara smiled at the memory. "My mother hated her. Said she was unladylike, always bringing dead things to the door. Sounds like a good cat. Lived to be ancient, died in her sleep on my 16th birthday. I cried for days. Natural to grieve what we love." The simple statement hung in the air. Clara studied his profile, the way firelight softened the harsh lines of his face. "Do you ever let yourself? Grieve, I mean, for what? The life you might have had, if things had been different." Eli was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Hard to grieve what you never had to lose. But you think about it. Sometimes." He glanced at her. "More lately." "Why lately?" He held her gaze, and Clara felt her breath catch. "You know why." The fire crackled. Rain hammered the windows. The moment stretched between them, fragile and charged. Clara's heart thundered as Eli rose from his chair, crossing to sit on the edge of the sofa near her uninjured foot. "Clara," her name was rough on his lips. "This thing between us, I know—" "It can't. We can't." "Why?" The word escaped before she could stop it. "Because we're married for convenience? Because you think you're too damaged? Because you deserve better?" The words seemed torn from him. "You deserve someone who hasn't done the things I've done. Someone who can give you a real life, not this shadow of one." "What if I don't want someone else?" Clara sat up, ignoring the twinge in her ankle. "What if I want—" Lightning flashed, illuminating his face for an instant. The raw longing there, the battle between desire and restraint. Then thunder shook the house, and the lamp flickered and died, leaving only firelight. In the sudden dimness, everything felt different, more intimate, more possible. "Eli." She reached out, fingertips barely brushing his hand where it rested on the sofa. He turned his palm up, catching her fingers. His hand was calloused, warm, and Clara felt the touch all the way to her toes. Slowly, as if she might spook, he lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm that sent fire racing through her veins. "You don't know what you're asking," he said against her skin. "Then show me." He made a sound, part laugh, part groan. "Clara, I'm trying to be honorable. I don't want honorable. I want honest." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her bold. She shifted closer, her free hand coming up to touch his face, thumb tracing the line of that old scar. "Clara." Her name was a prayer, a warning, a surrender. Then his mouth was on hers, and thought fled. The kiss was nothing like the chaste pecks Thomas had occasionally bestowed. This was hunger and need, years of loneliness seeking solace. Eli's hand tangled in her hair, angling her head as he deepened the kiss, and Clara felt herself drowning in sensation. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the world had shifted on its axis. "I'm sorry," Eli started, but Clara pressed her fingers to his lips. Don't apologize for the first real thing to happen between us. Clara, we agreed. Separate rooms. Business arrangement. That was before. Before what? Before I knew you. Before you became—" She struggled for words. "Before you became necessary." His expression crumbled, revealing such naked vulnerability it took her breath. "You can't mean that." "Can't I?" She cupped his face in both hands. "Eli Danner, you impossible, stubborn, beautiful man. I've been falling for weeks and too afraid to admit it." Afraid? You? Terrified, because wanting you means admitting I never really wanted Thomas. It means being the woman everyone whispers I am, the one who buried her husband and took another too fast. To hell with what they whisper. The vehemence in his voice surprised them both. Then Eli was kissing her again, softer this time but no less intense. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. How to be what you need. I don't need you to be anything but yourself. That might be the problem, or the solution. Clara threaded her fingers through his. We're both broken. Eli, maybe that means we fit together better. He laughed, soft and wondering. When did you get so wise? Somewhere between falling off my horse and this moment. They stayed there as the storm raged, trading kisses and touches, learning the shape of each other. When the fire burned low, Eli carried her to her room, settling her carefully on the bed. Stay, she whispered, catching his hand. Clara, not for just stay, sleep beside me. Let me not be alone tonight. The struggle on his face was clear, but finally he nodded. He lay down beside her, fully clothed on top of the covers. Clara curled into his side, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat gradually slow. Eli? This changes everything, doesn't it? His arm tightened around her. Everything, he agreed. Outside, the storm was already passing, but inside Clara's heart, a different tempest was just beginning. She'd broken all her own rules, shattered the careful boundaries she'd erected. But with Eli's warmth beside her and his breath stirring her hair, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Wade might return. The town would gossip. Reality would intrude. Tonight she had this. A killer's gentle hands, a broken man's careful heart, and the first stirrings of something that might, despite all odds, grow into love. The attack came at dusk, 3 days after the storm. Clara was checking on the chickens when she heard the first gunshot, a sharp crack that sent the birds into panicked flight. Then came the sound of horses, too many horses, and men shouting, "Get everyone inside!" someone yelled. "They hit the stage station!" Clara ran for the house, her recently healed ankle protesting. Through the kitchen window, she could see riders on the main road, at least a dozen men, their faces covered with bandanas. The Wallace gang, the same men who'd killed Thomas. Where was Eli? He'd ridden out that morning to check the far pastures. Fear clawed at her throat as she grabbed the Winchester, checking the load with trembling fingers. More gunshots echoed from town. Then she saw them, 3 riders breaking off from the main group, heading straight for the ranch. Her ranch. Clara positioned herself at the front window, rifle ready. Her hands were steady now, fear crystallizing into cold determination. They wouldn't take her home, not without a fight. The riders pulled up just outside rifle range, and one called out, "Mrs. Danner, we know you're in there. Come on out, and nobody gets hurt." She recognized the voice. Jake Wallace himself, the man who'd terrorized the territory for 2 years. Clara stayed silent, sighting down the barrel. "Your husband ain't here to protect you," Wallace continued. "Saw him ourselves, riding toward Eagle Creek. By the time he figures out what's happening, it'll all be over." They'd planned this, waited until Eli was gone. Clara's finger found the trigger. "Now, we ain't here to hurt you, ma'am. Just need supplies, food, ammunition, maybe some of that gold the sheriff was supposed to have hidden. You cooperate. We ride on. Nobody has to die today." Lies. Clara had seen what the Wallace gang left behind. Burned homes, murdered families. They didn't leave witnesses. Movement to her left caught her eye. Another rider, circling toward the back of the house. She shifted position, trying to cover both approaches, knowing it was impossible. Then she heard it, the thunder of hooves riding hard, a lone rider cresting the hill, coat billowing behind him like wings of vengeance. Eli. He must have heard the shots, must have ridden like hell itself was chasing him. Wallace's men saw him too, wheeling their horses to face this new threat. "Well, well," Wallace drawled. "The husband returns. Boys, looks like we get to have some fun after all." What happened next burned itself into Clara's memory forever. Eli didn't slow down, didn't stop to parley. He came on like an avalanche, pistol already in hand. The first shot took the rider nearest to him clean off his horse. The second sent another man spinning to the dirt. Wallace's remaining men returned fire, the air suddenly full of lead and death. Clara saw Eli's horse stumble, saw him leap clear as the animal went down. He hit the ground rolling, came up firing. Every shot found its mark with terrible precision, but there were too many of them. Clara saw a rider flanking Eli, raising his rifle. Without thought, she smashed the window with her Winchester's butt and fired. The man jerked, clutched his shoulder, and wheeled away. "The house!" Wallace roared. "Someone's in the damn house!" Two riders charged toward her. Clara fired, levered, fired again. One horse screamed and went down. The other rider kept coming. She got off one more shot before he reached the porch, then had to throw herself back as bullets splintered the window frame. Heavy boots on the porch. Clara scrambled for Thomas's pistol, kept loaded in the kitchen drawer. The front door crashed open just as her fingers closed on the grip. The man who entered was huge, beard matted with trail dust, eyes wild with battle fever. He saw her, grinned, started to raise his gun. Clara shot him twice in the chest. He looked surprised, then toppled backward through the doorway. Outside, the gunfire had intensified. Clara risked a look and her heart nearly stopped. Eli was pinned behind the overturned water trough. 3 men closing in. Blood soaked his left sleeve, and he was down to his last cylinder. She didn't think, just acted, grabbing the rifle again. Clara burst through the back door, circling to catch the attackers from behind. The first man never saw her coming. Her shot took him between the shoulders, and he pitched forward into the dirt. The others spun toward her, and suddenly, Clara was in the open, exposed. She dove behind the chicken coop as bullets whined overhead, splinters flying. But her distraction had given Eli the opening he needed. He rose from behind the trough like something out of a nightmare, moving with that terrible grace she'd only glimpsed before. 2 shots, so close together they sounded like one. 2 men fell. Then, suddenly, silence. Gun smoke drifted across the yard like fog. Clara peered around the coop to see Eli standing alone among the bodies, pistol still raised, blood dripping from his wounded arm. "Clara," his voice was rough, urgent. "Are you hit?" "I'm all right." She emerged on shaking legs, rifle clutched like a talisman. "You're hurt." "It's nothing." But he swayed as he said it. That's when they heard it. More horses coming. Clara's heart sank. How many more? How much more could they survive? But the riders who appeared wore badges, led by Marshal Tom Brennan from the county seat. They surveyed the carnage with professional interest. "Danner." Brennan nodded. "Mrs. Danner. Got word the Wallace gang hit the stage station. Looks like they hit you too." "They did." Eli's voice was steady despite the blood loss. "They won't be hitting anyone else." Brennan dismounted, counting bodies. 5 men, including... He rolled one corpse over with his boot. "Well, I'll be damned. That's Charlie Wallace, Jake's brother." "Jake?" Clara asked. "Got away. Him and maybe 3 others. But this..." Brennan gestured at the scene. "This'll break the gang's back. Been hunting these bastards for 2 years." He looked at Eli with something like respect. "Hell of a piece of work, Danner. My wife helped." Eli's eyes found Clara's. "Couldn't have done it without her." Brennan's eyebrows rose. "That's so. Well, Mrs. Danner, there's reward money on these men. Considerable money. You 2 just got yourselves a fortune." But Clara barely heard him. She was already at Eli's side, examining his wound. The bullet had torn through the muscle of his upper arm, bleeding freely but missing the bone. "Inside," she ordered. "Now. The marshal can handle the cleanup." Inside. She got him to the kitchen, helped him out of his ruined shirt. Her hands were steady now as she cleaned and dressed the wound. though inside she was shaking. "You came back," she said quietly. "Heard the shots. Knew they'd come for you while I was gone." His good hand caught hers. Clara, I thought I'd be too late." "You weren't. When I saw them here. Saw you in that window with the rifle." He shook his head. "I've never been so scared in my life." "You? Scared?" "Terrified. The thought of losing you—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "You didn't. I'm right here. You shot a man to save me. He was going to kill you. Most people couldn't have made that shot, or any shot, in a fight like that." Clara secured the bandage, then met his eyes. "I'm not most people." "No," he agreed softly. "You're not." They stayed like that, her hands on his chest, his eyes holding hers, the violence of moments ago contrasting sharply with this gentle intimacy. "Finally," Clara asked, "will Jake Wallace come back?" "Maybe, but without his brother, without his men. He's finished. He knows it." "So it's over?" "This part is—" Marshal Brennan knocked, then entered without waiting for permission. "Got the bodies loaded up. I'll need statements from both of you, but that can wait until tomorrow." He set a leather pouch on the table with a heavy clink. "Advance on the reward money. Rest will come from the territorial governor." After he left, Clara opened the pouch. Gold coins spilled out, more money than she'd seen in her life. "We can fix the ranch now," she said. "Buy better stock, repair all the fences, maybe even add on to the house. She looked up at him. Unless you're planning to leave. Now that the danger's past." Eli stood, moving to the window despite her protests about his arm. Outside, the marshal's men were finishing their grim work. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "You know what I realized? Riding back here hell-bent? What? That I wasn't riding to defend Thomas Whitmore's ranch or to keep a promise to a dead man?" He turned to face her. "I was riding home. To you." Clara's throat tightened. "Eli, I love you." The words came out rushed, as if he'd been holding them back too long. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe that night in the storm, maybe before. But when I thought they might hurt you," he crossed to her in 2 strides, framing her face with his hands. "Clara, you've become my whole world. I don't know how to be without you anymore." "Then don't," she whispered. "Be without me. I mean—" "It won't be easy. People will still talk. I'll still be the killer who married the sheriff's widow. And I'll still be the woman who buried one husband and took another too fast." Clara covered his hands with hers. "But today we saved each other. We fought for our home, our life. That has to count for something." "Everything," he corrected, and kissed her. This kiss was different from the gentle explorations of recent nights. This was survival and relief and love, all tangled together. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard. Clara saw her future clear as day. Not the lonely widowhood she'd expected or the loveless marriage she'd resigned herself to, but a true partnership forged in fire and tested by violence. "Take me to bed," she said simply. "Clara, my arm." "I'll be gentle." A smile tugged at her lips despite everything. "Unless you don't want me to be." He laughed, the sound rusty but real. "You're going to be the death of me." "Woman." "No," she said seriously. "I'm going to be the life of you. Just like you're the life of me." Later, as they lay entwined in her bed, their bed now, Clara traced the new scar that would join the collection on his skin. Outside, night had fallen. But for once the darkness held no threats. The Wallace gang was broken. The reward money would secure their future. And in this bed, 2 damaged souls had found something worth fighting for. "I love you too," she whispered against his chest. "In case that wasn't clear." His arms tightened around her. "It was clear when you picked up that rifle, when you walked out into gunfire for me, when you refused to let me bleed out while being properly polite to the marshal. Someone has to keep you alive, and someone has to keep you from being too brave for your own good. Sounds like we're stuck with each other then. Sounds like—" They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other while the night stretched peaceful outside. The prairie that had seemed so hostile when she'd first married Eli now felt like home, their home, bought with blood and courage and unexpected love. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, Clara Danner slept safe in the arms of her gunslinger-turned-rancher, her heart finally at peace. The boy appeared on a Tuesday morning, standing at their gate like a lost calf. Clara spotted him first from the kitchen window, skinny, maybe 10 years old, clothes more patches than fabric. He clutched a worn carpet bag and stared at the house as if working up courage to approach. "Eli?" she called softly. "We have a visitor." Eli joined her at the window, his expression immediately guarded. In the months since the Wallace gang attack, they'd both remained wary of strangers. "Stay inside until I—" "He's a child, Eli. Children can be bait." But even as he said it, Eli was reaching for his hat, not his gun. Clara smiled at this tell, her dangerous husband, undone by a scrawny boy at their gate. She watched from the porch as Eli approached the child. The boy took a half step back, then held his ground, chin jutting with fragile bravado. "This the Danner place?" the boy asked. "It is. You lost, son?" "No, sir, I'm—" The boy swallowed hard. "Sheriff Whitmore. He said if anything happened to him, I should come here. Said his wife would look after me." Clara's hand flew to her throat. She hurried down to join them, ignoring Eli's warning glance. "Thomas sent you?" she asked gently. The boy nodded, finally looking up. His eyes were green as bottle glass, too old for his young face. "Yes, ma'am. He used to check on me at the orphanage, bring me books and such. Said I reminded him of someone." "What's your name?" "Samuel. Ma'am, Sam Carter." Clara's heart clenched. Thomas had mentioned a boy at the orphanage, one he'd taken special interest in. She'd always suspected it was because they'd never had children of their own, but Thomas had never brought the child home, never suggested. "When did he tell you to come here?" Eli asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Couple of weeks before he died. Said trouble was coming. And if something happened, I shouldn't stay at the orphanage. Said Mrs. Whitmore would understand." "The orphanage let you leave?" Clara asked. Sam's face darkened. "Didn't exactly ask permission. Place burned down last week. They say it was an accident, but—" he shrugged, the gesture too weary for a child. "Weren't no accident." Eli and Clara exchanged glances. The orphanage fire had been the talk of the town. 3 children dead, the rest scattered to neighboring counties. Except, apparently, for Sam. "You've been on your own since then?" Clara asked. "Yes, ma'am. Took me a while to find the ranch. Had to ask careful like. Some folks, they don't much care for questions about Sheriff Whitmore's widow." "Come inside," Clara decided. "You look like you could use a meal." Sam's careful composure cracked slightly. "I don't want charity. Ma'am, I can work. I'm good with horses, and I can read and write real good. Sheriff Whitmore taught me." "Inside," Clara repeated gently. "We'll sort out the details later." As she ushered the boy toward the house, she caught Eli's expression, wary, uncertain. He'd accepted their marriage, their love, even their newfound prosperity. But a child? That was something else entirely. In the kitchen, Sam fell on the food she provided like he hadn't eaten in days. Probably hadn't. Clara realized, between bites, the story emerged in pieces. His parents dead of fever when he was 6, 4 years in the orphanage, where Thomas had singled him out, teaching him letters and numbers, bringing small treats. He said I was smart. Sam mumbled around a mouthful of biscuit. Said I could be somebody if I got the chance. He was right, Clara said softly. Sam glanced between her and Eli. "You don't have to keep me. I know it's not proper, showing up like this, but I didn't know where else to go." "Thomas sent you here," Clara said firmly. "That makes you welcome." Eli hadn't spoken since they'd come inside, but Clara felt his tension. When Sam yawned, she suggested he wash up at the pump while she made up the small room off the kitchen, originally meant for storage but easily converted. Once the boy was outside, Eli finally spoke. "Clara, we can't just—" Can't what? Take in a child my husband cared about? One who has nowhere else to go? I don't know anything about children. Neither do I. We'll learn. It's not that simple. A child changes everything. And we don't even know if he's telling the truth about Thomas. He is. Clara pulled out Thomas's journal, flipping to an entry from 2 months before his death. Here. Visited Sam at the orphanage today. Boy's too bright for that place. If something happens to me, I hope Clara will do right by him. He deserves better than what life's given him. Eli read the entry, his frown deepening. He planned this. Thomas planned for you to take the boy. It seems so. Without asking you. Without even telling you. Clara heard the anger in his voice. Not at the boy, but at Thomas for one more secret. One more burden placed on her shoulders without consent. It doesn't matter now, she said. Sam's here, and he needs help. He needs a family, parents. We're barely... Eli stopped, running a hand through his hair. What? Barely married? Barely respectable? Barely managing not to kill each other? Despite the serious conversation, Clara felt her lips twitch. I'd say we're doing better than barely. You know what I mean. I'm not father material. Clara, I don't know how to raise a child, to be what a boy needs. And I don't know how to be a mother. But Thomas thought we could do right by Sam, and I'm inclined to trust his judgment. He was right about you, after all. That stopped Eli short. What? He told me you were a good man. In his journal, in his will. He trusted you to take care of me. Maybe he trusted us to take care of Sam, too. Before Eli could respond, the kitchen door opened and Sam peered in, face pink from scrubbing. Ma'am, I finished washing up. Good, let me show you your room. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed and a chest of drawers. Sam set down his carpet bag reverently, as if afraid to disturb the space. This is real nice. Ma'am, I'll earn my keep. I promise. I can... Sam. Clara sat on the bed, patting the spot beside her. After a moment's hesitation, he joined her. You don't have to earn anything. Thomas cared about you. That's enough for me. What about him? Sam jerked his head toward the kitchen where Eli waited. He don't look too pleased about me being here. Mister, Danner is cautious with new people, but he's a good man. Give him time. Sam studied her with those 2 wise eyes. He's the one killed all them outlaws, isn't he? The gunslinger. He's a rancher now. My husband. Folks in town say he's dangerous. Folks in town say a lot of things. What matters is what's true. Clara touched the boy's shoulder gently. And the truth is, you're safe here. We'll figure out the rest as we go. Sam's composure finally cracked completely, tears welling up. I was so scared, he whispered, when the fire started, and then being alone and not knowing if you'd even remember me. Clara pulled him into a hug, feeling the bird-like bones of his shoulders, the way he trembled. You're not alone anymore. Over the next few days, they settled into an awkward rhythm. Sam was eager to help, following Eli around the ranch despite the man's apparent discomfort. Clara watched them from the window, Eli explaining something about fence posts while Sam listened intently, occasionally asking questions that made Eli pause and think. He's smart, Eli admitted one evening as they prepared for bed. Asks about things I never considered, like why we set posts a certain distance apart, or how to tell good grazing land from bad. Thomas was right about him. Maybe. Eli was quiet a moment. He's scared of me. He's cautious. There's a difference. Is there? Every time I move too quick, he flinches, like he's waiting for... Eli's jaw tightened. What happened at that orphanage? Clara? I don't know, but I can guess. She'd seen the marks on Sam's back when his shirt rode up, old bruises in various stages of healing. He'll trust you in time. What if he shouldn't? What if Thomas was wrong, and I'm not? Clara silenced him with a kiss. You are. You're exactly what that boy needs. Someone strong enough to protect him, but gentle enough not to break him. Someone who understands what it's like to be hurt and still choose to be better. The breakthrough came unexpectedly a week later. Clara had gone to town for supplies, leaving Eli and Sam to work on the chicken coop. When she returned, she found them by the corral. Sam perched on the fence while Eli worked with a young horse. "Got to let him know you're not a threat," Eli was saying. "But also that you're in charge. It's a balance." "Like with people?" Sam asked. Eli paused, considering. "Sometimes, yeah, like with people. Is that why you're good with guns? Balance?" Clara expected Eli to shut down the conversation, but instead, he moved closer to where Sam sat. "Being good with guns is about practice and staying calm, but being good with them isn't the same as being right to use them." "When is it right? When you're protecting something worth protecting? Someone who can't protect themselves?" "Like Mrs. Clara? Like Clara. And like you." Sam's eyes widened. "Me? You're part of this ranch now, aren't you? That makes you worth protecting." Clara saw the moment Sam's walls started to crumble. His young face worked through several emotions before settling on wonder. "Nobody ever said I was worth protecting before." Well, they were wrong. Eli's voice was gruff, but Clara heard the emotion underneath. "And if anyone gives you trouble, at school, in town, anywhere, you tell me, understand?" "Yes, sir, Eli," he corrected. "Just Eli is fine." That night, Sam chattered through dinner about horses and fences and a dozen other things Eli had taught him. Clara watched her husband's face soften incrementally with each excited observation from the boy. Later, as they lay in bed, Eli said quietly, "He's been hurt bad, not just the bruises inside. I know. Takes a certain kind of evil to hurt a child like that. Yes, I want to find who did it. At the orphanage. Eli, not to kill them," he said quickly. "Just to make sure they never touch another child. There are ways." Clara traced patterns on his chest, thinking, "Marshal Brennan owes us favors. Maybe he could investigate. Make sure whoever's responsible faces justice." "Justice." Eli tested the word. "That'd be new for me." "You're new for you," Clara pointed out. The man who rode with Wade Garrison wouldn't have spent all day teaching a boy about horses. Wouldn't have cared about bruises on a child's back. That man wouldn't have had you. No, Clara agreed. He wouldn't have. They were quiet a while, listening to the night sounds and the soft snoring from Sam's room. Finally, Eli said, "He can stay, long as he needs. I was hoping you'd say forever. Forever's a big word. It's a good word, a family word." Eli turned to look at her in the moonlight. "Is that what we are now? A family? I think we might be, if we're brave enough. You're the brave one. Then be brave with me." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they parted, Eli whispered, "All right, forever it is." From the other room came a small cry. Sam, caught in a nightmare. Before Clara could move, Eli was up, padding barefoot to the boy's door. She heard low voices, Eli's rumbling reassurance, Sam's tearful explanations of dreams about fire and darkness. "You're safe," she heard Eli say. "Nobody's going to hurt you here. Clara and I won't let them." "Promise?" Sam's voice was so small. "I promise, and I keep my promises." Clara smiled into her pillow. Her gunslinger, her dangerous husband, comforting a scared child in the dark. Thomas had been right about so many things, but especially this. They could do right by Sam. They could be the family none of them had expected, but all of them needed. The prairie wind sang around the house, and for the first time since Thomas's death, Clara felt truly at peace. They were no longer just two damaged souls trying to survive. They were three people choosing to heal together, to build something new from the ashes of their old lives. It wouldn't be easy. Sam would have nightmares and trust issues. Eli would struggle with gentleness. Clara would make mistakes. But together, they'd figure it out. Together, they'd make a home. The letter arrived on a Thursday afternoon, delivered by a rider who didn't wait for a response. Clara found it tucked under the door when she returned from the garden, her name written in unfamiliar script across expensive paper. Inside. Sam was practicing his letters at the kitchen table while Eli mended harness leather. The domestic scene still sometimes took her breath, her gunslinger husband teaching patience through example, their adopted boy working diligently on his studies. "Special delivery," she said, showing them the envelope. Eli's hands stilled. In the 2 months since Sam's arrival, they'd found an uneasy peace, but mysterious letters rarely brought good news. "Who's it from?" Clara broke the seal, scanning the contents. Her face paled. "Wade Garrison." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Eli set aside the harness, his movements carefully controlled. "What does he want? He says—" Clara's voice caught. "He says he has information about Thomas's death, about who really ordered it. He wants to meet. It's a trap." Eli's response was immediate. "Wade doesn't give information. He trades it or uses it as bait. What if it's not? What if he really knows?" "Clara." Eli crossed to her, taking her hands. "Wade Garrison would sell his own mother for the right price. Whatever he knows or claims to know, meeting him isn't worth your life." Sam had gone very still, his pencil frozen above the paper. "Mrs. Clara, is this about the sheriff?" Clara tried to smile reassuringly. "Just some old business. Sam, nothing to worry about." But the boy was too sharp for easy comfort. "The man who killed him, they never caught him, did they? Jake Wallace got away." "Sam," Eli started, but the boy pressed on. "I heard things. At the orphanage, before. Men talking when they thought I wasn't listening. They said Sheriff Whitmore was getting too close to something big, something about land deeds and railroad money." Clara and Eli exchanged glances. This was new information, delivered with a child's matter-of-fact directness. "What else did you hear?" Eli asked quietly. Sam squirmed under their attention. "Just that some folks in town weren't sad when he died, that maybe the Wallace gang was hired to do it." The kitchen fell silent. Clara reread Wade's letter, her hands trembling slightly. "He says to come alone, tomorrow night, the old mill outside Coyote Springs." "Absolutely not." Eli's tone brooked no argument. "What if he's telling the truth? What if Thomas died because he uncovered something? Then he died doing his job. That doesn't mean you need to die trying to prove it." "I'm not going to die. You're not going at all." They stared at each other, weeks of domestic harmony cracking under the weight of old ghosts. It was Sam who broke the tension. "I could go." "No." Both adults spoke in unison, making the boy flinch. "I just meant I'm good at sneaking, at listening. Maybe I could—" "Samuel Carter." Clara's voice was sharper than she'd ever used with him. "You will do no such thing. You will stay here, safe, where you belong." Sam's face crumpled slightly at the rebuke, and Clara immediately softened. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to snap, but Sam, these are dangerous men. I won't risk you. Not for anything." "Then why risk yourself?" The boy's question was small but pointed. Clara had no good answer. The truth was, Thomas's death haunted her. Not with grief for lost love. She'd made peace with that, but with questions. Why that night? Why alone? What had he been investigating? That evening, as Clara cleaned up after supper, Eli cornered her in the kitchen. "You're still thinking about going." It wasn't a question. Clara dried the last plate slowly, choosing her words. What if the answer to who killed Thomas leads to why? What if it's bigger than just one sheriff getting too curious? What if it is? Thomas is still dead. Knowing why won't bring him back. But it might prevent others. I don't care about others. The vehemence in Eli's voice startled them both. He took a breath, moderating his tone. I care about you, about Sam, about this life we're building. Wade will destroy all of that if given the chance. Then come with me, he said alone. Since when do we follow outlaws' rules? Eli caught her shoulders, turning her to face him. Clara, please, I'm begging you. Don't do this. She'd never heard him beg for anything. It shook her resolve, but didn't break it. I have to know. Eli, I have to. He searched her face, then pulled her against him, holding tight. Then I'm going too. Hidden. Sam can stay with the Hendersons. No. Clara pulled back. If something happens, Sam needs one of us here. He can't lose everything again. Nothing's going to happen because you're not going. But Clara had inherited more than land from her marriage to Thomas. She'd inherited his stubbornness too. The argument continued in whispers through the night, neither willing to yield. The next morning, Eli tried a different approach. He took Sam out to work, leaving Clara to her thoughts. But when they returned for lunch, Sam was uncharacteristically quiet. "What's wrong?" Clara asked, setting sandwiches before them. Sam glanced at Eli, then down at his plate. "Nothing, ma'am." "Samuel." The boy squirmed. Eli said, "He said sometimes people we care about make choices we don't like, that we can't stop them, only try to keep them safe." Clara shot Eli a look. Using the boy to make his point was low, even for a former outlaw. But Eli met her gaze steadily, unrepentant. "He's right," Clara admitted. "Sometimes we have to do things others don't understand, like meeting with bad men in the dark." Sam's voice was small. "Like seeking the truth, even when it's dangerous." Truth didn't help Sheriff Whitmore much, Sam pointed out with a child's brutal honesty. The words hit like cold water. Clara sank into her chair, suddenly exhausted. "No, it didn't. But maybe," Sam continued slowly, "maybe it helps the folks left behind to know why, to stop it happening again." He looked between them. "That's what Eli says justice is, making sure bad things don't keep happening." Out of the mouths of babes, Clara reached over, smoothing the boy's unruly hair. "When did you get so wise?" "Eli's been teaching me." Sam straightened with pride, "about justice and protection and doing what's right, even when it's hard." Clara looked at her husband, who had the grace to appear slightly sheepish. "Has he now?" "Yes, ma'am. He says that's what makes us different from men like Wade Garrison. We protect folks instead of hurting them." The irony of Eli's own words being used against him wasn't lost on anyone. "Finally." Eli sighed in defeat. "If you're going, I'm going. That's not negotiable." Wade said, "I'll stay out of sight unless needed, but I won't let you face him alone." His tone suggested further argument would be futile. "And me?" Sam asked. "You stay with the Hendersons." Clara said firmly, "This isn't your fight." "It is, though," Sam said quietly. "Sheriff Whitmore was my friend, too. The only person who ever—" He trailed off, then lifted his chin. "I want to help." "You help by staying safe," Eli said. "By being here when we get back. Can you do that?" Sam nodded reluctantly. "I can wait here. Keep watch on things." "Good man." Eli's approval brought a ghost of a smile to the boy's face. That evening, as Clara prepared to leave, she found Sam in her room, placing something on her pillow. It was a small wooden cross, crudely carved. "Sheriff Whitmore gave me that," Sam explained, embarrassed. "Said it would keep me safe. Maybe it'll help you." Clara's eyes burned with unshed tears. "Sam, just bring it back, okay? Both of you, come back." She hugged him tight, feeling his thin arms wrap around her. "We will, I promise." The ride to Coyote Springs took 2 hours through gathering darkness. Eli rode parallel to her, far enough away to avoid detection but close enough to intervene if needed. The old mill loomed against the stars, its broken wheels silhouetted like bones. Wade Garrison emerged from the shadows as she dismounted, still wearing that predator's smile. "Mrs. Danner, punctual. I always admired that about Tom. He was punctual too, right up until the end. You said you had information. Straight to business. No social niceties." Wade tisked. "Your new husband's rubbing off on you. Speaking of which, I assume he's out there somewhere." "Watching?" Clara didn't deny it. "Talk, Wade, or I'm leaving." "Fair enough." Wade leaned against the mill's wall, casual as a Sunday social. "Your husband, your first husband, was investigating something before he died. Land grants, railroad routes. Some very powerful people were making moves to buy up seemingly worthless land that would suddenly become very valuable once the railroad announced its path. Thomas suspected corruption. That's not news. No, but the names involved might be Judge Harlan, for instance, Mayor Peterson, even your friendly Marshal Brennan. Clara's blood chilled. These were the pillars of their community, the men who'd forced her marriage to Eli, who controlled law and order in the county. You're lying. Am I? Check the land records. See who's been buying up parcels along Willow Creek, worthless scrubland. Unless you know the railroad's surveying that exact route next spring. How would they know? Clara stopped. Of course. Bribes. Information sold to the highest bidder. Thomas had been getting close to exposing it all. Your sheriff was an honest man in a dishonest world. Wade continued. They tried to buy him first. When that didn't work, he shrugged. They hired Jake Wallace. Jake was just the weapon. The hand holding it wore a much finer glove. Wade pushed off from the wall. There's more. Names, dates, proof. All yours for the right price. Here it comes. Clara thought. What price? Your husband. The real one. Eli Danner. Wade's smile turned cruel. He owes me a life. His debt from Laredo. I'm willing to trade. His life for the truth about Thomas Whitmore's death. You're insane. Am I? Think about it. Justice for your first husband or happiness with your second? Which matters more? Clara, the dead or the living? Before Clara could respond, Eli materialized from the darkness, gun drawn. The living, always the living. Wade didn't seem surprised. Eli, right on time. This ends now. Wade, whatever game you're playing, no game, just business. Wade's hand hovered near his pistol. Though I admit, I'm curious. The great Eli Danner, domesticated, playing house with a sheriff's widow. You really think you can wash that much blood off your hands? I'm trying, and failing. You can't change what you are. Eli, none of us can. Wade's voice dropped, almost sympathetic. You think I don't want out sometimes? Think I don't get tired of looking over my shoulder, waiting for the bullet with my name on it? But this is what we are, what we'll always be. You're wrong. Clara stepped between them, heart pounding. People can change. They can choose to be better. Can they? Wade laughed. Tell that to Thomas Whitmore. He chose to be better. To be honest. To seek justice. Look where it got him. The truth in those words was painful. But Clara lifted her chin. It got him remembered as a good man. It got him mourned by people who mattered. What will you be remembered for? Wade, who'll mourn you? Something flickered in Wade's eyes. Pain, perhaps, or longing. Then his mask slammed back into place. The offer stands, Eli, for the truth. You've got 1 week to decide. No deal, Eli said flatly. Then you'll never know who really killed your husband. Wade told Clara. You'll never get justice. Can you live with that? Clara felt the weight of the moment. The choice between vengeance and love, past and future. Then she took Eli's free hand, squeezing tight. Yes, she said simply. I can live with that, because I'd rather build a future with the living than seek revenge for the dead. Thomas is gone. Nothing will bring him back. But Eli is here. Sam needs us. That matters more than old secrets and corrupt men. Wade studied them for a long moment. How disappointingly noble. And here I thought you had steel in your spine. She does, Eli said quietly. More than you'll ever have. It takes steel to choose forgiveness over revenge, to build instead of destroy. Pretty words. But words won't protect you when Judge Harlan decides you know too much. When Marshal Brennan comes calling with a warrant. When Eli's gun cocked, the sound loud as thunder. They're welcome to try. Wade raised his hands in mock surrender. Easy, partner. I'm just the messenger. But think about it. My offer could solve all your problems. The truth, delivered neat as you please. All for the low price of one reformed killer. Get out of here. Wade, don't come back. Oh, I'll be around. Like a bad penny. I always turn up. Wade backed toward his horse, keeping his hands visible. 1 week, Mrs. Danner. After that, I take my information elsewhere, maybe to those corrupt officials who'd pay well to keep their secrets buried." He mounted and rode off, leaving Clara and Eli alone with the weight of revelation and choice. Clara sagged against Eli, suddenly exhausted. "He's right about one thing," she said. "They'll come for us now." "If they think we know, let them come." Eli holstered his gun, wrapping both arms around her. "We'll face it together. The whole town could be against us, everyone we thought we could trust. We have each other. We have Sam. That's enough." Clara pulled back to look at him. "You'd really give yourself up?" "If I asked." "If you asked, yes, but you won't." "How do you know?" "Because you meant what you said, about choosing the future over the past, about building instead of destroying." He touched her face gently. "Because you love me?" "I do." The words came easily now. Truth as simple as breathing. "God help me, I do." They rode home through darkness lit by stars, the weight of dangerous knowledge heavy on their shoulders. But Clara found herself thinking not of corruption and conspiracy, but of Sam waiting at home, of the life they were building, of the choice to face whatever came together. Justice for Thomas would have to come another way, through careful investigation and legal channels if possible. She wouldn't trade Eli's life for it, wouldn't sacrifice their future for the past. At the ranch, Sam was waiting on the porch despite the late hour. He flew into Clara's arms the moment she dismounted. "You came back, both of you. I promised, didn't I?" Clara hugged him tight, then held out the wooden cross. "And I brought this back too." Sam took it solemnly, then surprised them both by handing it to Eli. "You keep it now, since you're protecting us." Eli stared at the small cross, throat working. "Sam, it's okay," the boy said simply. "I know you don't think you deserve it, but I think you do. So does Mrs. Clara, that's enough, isn't it?" Eli closed his fist around the cross, pulling Sam into a rare embrace. "Yeah, kid, that's enough." Later, as they prepared for bed, Clara told Eli everything Wade had revealed about the corruption, the land deals, the conspiracy that likely killed Thomas. Eli listened grimly. "We'll need to be careful. If they think we're a threat." "I know." Clara brushed out her hair, thinking. "But we're not alone. There must be other honest folk in town. People who suspected but were too afraid to speak up. Maybe now? Maybe?" Eli was quiet a moment. "Do you regret it? Not taking Wade's deal?" Clara set down her brush, moving to where he sat on the bed. "Not for a second. Thomas is at peace. I won't disturb that for revenge." She cupped his face. "Besides, I have everything I need right here. A husband I love, a son to raise, a future to build. A dangerous future. Perhaps, but it's our future. That makes it worth fighting for." Eli pulled her down for a kiss, soft and full of promise. When they parted, he said, "Wade was wrong about one thing. I have changed. Maybe not completely, maybe not perfectly, but enough to know what matters. You, Sam, this life we're making. Then we'll protect it. Together." "Together," he agreed. Outside, a wolf howled, and another answered, wild calling to wild. But inside, Clara felt only peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Wade might return. The corrupt officials might move against them. The past might refuse to stay buried. But tonight, they were home. They were family. They were choosing love over fear, hope over revenge, future over past. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The schoolhouse stood at the edge of town, white-painted boards gleaming in the morning sun. Clara adjusted Sam's new collar for the third time, trying to calm her own nerves as much as his. "Stop fussing," Eli said gently, catching her hands. "He looks fine." "Do I?" Sam asked, uncertainty clear in his voice. It had been 3 months since Wade's threats. 3 months of quiet preparation for whatever storm might come. Now, sending Sam to school felt like exposing him to danger. "You look like a proper student," Clara assured him. "You'll do wonderfully." But as they approached the schoolhouse, Clara noticed the other parents drawing their children closer, whispers following in their wake. The news of their confrontation with Wade had spread, twisted through retelling until no one quite knew what to believe. Mrs. Henderson, whose husband ran the general store, actually crossed the street to avoid them. Clara felt the snub like a physical blow, but kept her head high. "Morning, Mrs. Henderson," she called out pleasantly. The woman hurried on, without acknowledging them. "Why did she—" Sam started. "Some folks are small-minded," Eli said quietly. "Don't pay them any mind." At the schoolhouse door, Miss Margaret Wells waited. Young, pretty, new to town as of last month. She smiled warmly at Sam, though Clara caught the way her eyes lingered on Eli with curiosity and something else. "You must be Samuel. I'm looking forward to having you in class." "Yes, ma'am." Sam straightened, trying to look taller. "I can already read and write real good. Sheriff Whitmore taught me." "How wonderful. We'll find plenty to challenge you then." Miss Wells turned to Clara and Eli. "Mr. and Mrs. Danner, I've heard so much about you. I imagine you have." Clara said carefully, "Yes." The teacher's smile grew wider. "How you fought off those outlaws. How you've taken in young Samuel. How you're making such improvements to your ranch." She leaned closer, dropping her voice. "Not everyone in this town believes gossip. You know, some of us prefer to judge people by their actions." It was the first kindness from a stranger they'd encountered in weeks. Clara felt her throat tighten. "Thank you, Miss Wells. Please, call me Margaret." She placed a gentle hand on Sam's shoulder. "I'll take good care of him. You have my word." As they walked back to where they'd tied the horses, Clara noticed Eli's thoughtful expression. "What?" "That teacher. She's not what she seems." "What do you mean?" "The way she stands, the way she watches. She's had training." "Training in what?" "Surviving." Eli helped Clara mount her horse. "Maybe we're not the only ones in Cedar Ridge running from something." The ride home took them past the Willow Creek parcels Wade had mentioned. Sure enough, new survey stakes dotted the scrubland, and Clara recognized Judge Harlan's wagon parked near a rise. "Should we—" she began. "Keep riding," Eli advised, "but remember what we see." That afternoon, Clara opened her small school for the local ranch children whose families couldn't make the daily trek to town. 6 students appeared, fewer than before, but those who came seemed genuinely glad to be there. She was teaching them arithmetic when she heard horses approaching. Through the window, she saw Marshal Brennan and 2 deputies riding up to the house. Her heart sank. "Continue your problems," she told the children, keeping her voice calm. "I'll be right back." Eli was already on the porch when she emerged, stance casual but ready. Marshal Brennan tipped his hat to Clara, his expression unreadable. "Mrs. Danner, heard you had a visitor a few weeks back, Wade Garrison." "That's right," Clara said, moving to stand beside Eli. "Mind telling me what he wanted?" "To cause trouble," Eli answered. "Same as always with Wade." "That all?" Brennan's eyes were sharp. "Nothing about other matters." Clara felt Eli tense beside her, but kept her own expression neutral. "What other matters would those be? Marshal?" "Oh, this and that. Man like Garrison hears things. Might share them with folks who'd listen." "We're not interested in anything Wade Garrison has to say," Clara stated firmly. "Smart, very smart." Brennan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Still, if he contacts you again, I'd appreciate knowing about it, for your safety." "Of course." "Of course," Eli echoed dryly. The marshal studied them a moment longer, then touched his hat brim again. "Well, I'll leave you to your teaching, Mrs. Danner. Fine thing you're doing, educating these children. Shame if anything were to disrupt it." The threat was politely delivered but unmistakable. After they rode off, Clara realized she was shaking. "He knows," she whispered. "About what Wade told us. Maybe, or maybe he's fishing." Eli pulled her close. "Either way, we knew this was coming." That evening, Sam returned from school bright-eyed with excitement. chattering about lessons and new friends and how Miss Wells had praised his reading. For a moment, listening to him, Clara could almost forget the danger closing in around them. "She said I could help teach the younger ones their letters," Sam announced proudly over dinner. "And Billy Morrison asked if I wanted to go fishing Saturday. Can I?" "We'll see," Clara said, exchanging glances with Eli. Billy Morrison, whose father had been so cold to her at the store. "His PA probably doesn't know," Sam said, reading their thoughts with his usual perception. "Billy said his ma told him not to listen to gossip, that you saved his pa's life once, Mrs. Clara, when he had the fever." Clara remembered. 2 winters ago, she'd helped nurse several townspeople through an influenza outbreak. Strange how quickly good deeds were forgotten when scandal arose. Later, as Sam did his homework, Margaret Wells appeared at their door. She'd ridden out alone, which raised Eli's hackles immediately. "Forgive the intrusion," she said, "but I thought you should know. There was talk in town after you left, about the ranch, about whether it's suitable for Sam to remain here." Clara's blood chilled. "They wouldn't dare. They would. They are." Margaret's pretty face was grave. Judge Harlan was saying how a boy needs a proper Christian home, not one tainted by violence and scandal. "That hypocritical—" Eli bit off the curse, mindful of Sam in the next room. "There's more," Margaret continued. "I've seen this before, in other towns. When powerful men want something, they start by isolating their targets. Then comes legal pressure. Then—" She spread her hands. "Why are you telling us this?" Eli asked bluntly. Margaret met his gaze steadily. "Because I've been where you are. Different circumstances, but the same pattern. Because Sam is a bright boy who deserves better. And because—" She hesitated, then lifted her chin. "Because I believe we should stand by good people, even when it's dangerous. It could be dangerous for you too," Clara warned. "I've faced worse." There was steel in the young teacher's voice. "Now, I have a proposition. I board with Mrs. Talbot, who's on the town council. I hear things. If you're willing, I could keep you informed. In exchange for—" Eli's tone was cautious. "Nothing, except perhaps friendship." Margaret's smile was wry. "Those of us who don't quite fit the mold should stick together, don't you think?" After she left, promising to visit again soon, Clara found Eli staring out the window into the darkness. "We can't fight the whole town," he said quietly. "We won't have to. You heard Margaret. There are others who think like her. Mrs. Morrison, apparently, maybe more. Maybe, but will they stand with us when it counts?" Clara didn't have an answer for that. The test came sooner than expected. Sunday morning, they arrived at church to find their usual pew occupied. When they tried to sit elsewhere, people shifted away, leaving them isolated in a sea of turned backs. Sam pressed closer to Clara, his small face set in stubborn lines. "We belong here too," he whispered fiercely. "Yes, we do," Clara agreed, keeping her voice level despite the hurt and anger churning inside. Reverend Pemberton's sermon was pointed, full of references to sin and redemption and the dangers of harboring vipers. Clara felt each word like a lash, but kept her head high, refusing to show how deeply they cut. It was Eli who surprised everyone. When the collection plate came around, he stood. "I have something to say." The church fell silent, electric with tension. Reverend Pemberton's face flushed. "This is hardly the time." "It's exactly the time," Eli interrupted. "You preach about sin and redemption? Fine. I've sinned. I've killed men. Some deserved it. Some maybe didn't. I carry that weight every day." Clara reached for his hand, but he gently pulled away, continuing. "But I've also protected this town, fought off men who would have burned it to the ground. My wife," his voice softened on the word, "stood with me, showed more courage than most men I've known. We've taken in an orphan boy, given him home and family. If that's not redemption, I don't know what is." "Fine words from a hired gun," someone muttered. Eli turned toward the voice. "Yes, I was a hired gun. Just like some of you were thieves, drunks, cheats, and worse before you found your way here. The difference is, I don't pretend my past didn't happen. I'm trying to be better. Can all of you say the same? The uncomfortable shifting in pews told Clara his words had hit home. Furthermore, Eli continued, his gaze finding Judge Harlan, those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, especially when those houses are built on land bought with dirty money. The judge's face purpled. How dare you? The truth hurts, doesn't it? Eli sat back down, taking Clara's hand. We'll leave when the service is over, but we won't be driven out. Not by shame, not by threats, not by hypocrites who've forgotten their own sins. The rest of the service passed in tense silence, but as they filed out, Clara noticed something had shifted. Mrs. Morrison caught her eye and nodded slightly. Dr. Garrett, who'd been cold to them for weeks, murmured, "Well said," as he passed. Even some who'd shunned them looked thoughtful rather than hostile. Outside, Margaret Wells was waiting with several other young women, the teacher's assistants and seamstresses, who usually kept to themselves. "We wanted you to know," Margaret said clearly, her voice carrying, "that Sam is welcome in school. Any child under your care is fortunate indeed." "Here, here," called a voice, and Clara turned to see Mr. Johansson, the blacksmith. "You folks have been good customers and good neighbors. Don't let anyone tell you different." It wasn't the whole town. It wasn't even a majority, but it was a start. That afternoon, as they sat on their porch watching Sam play with the barn cats, Clara leaned into Eli's shoulder. "That was brave, what you did. That was necessary. They needed to hear it. Do you think it'll make a difference?" Eli was quiet, watching Sam laugh as a kitten climbed his shirt. "Maybe. Or maybe it'll make things worse. But at least now they know we won't go quietly." "No," Clara agreed. "We won't." A rider appeared on the horizon, and they both tensed. But it was just Dr. Garrett, medical bag in hand. "Thought I'd check on that arm of yours. Denner," he said gruffly. "Make sure it healed proper from that bullet wound. No charge." Clara hid her smile as Eli submitted to the examination. It was a small gesture, but significant. The tide might be turning. That evening, as Clara tucked Sam into bed, he asked, "Are we going to be okay? Really okay?" Clara smoothed his hair, choosing her words carefully. "I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I know we'll face it together. You, me, and Eli. We're family now. That means something. Even if the whole town turns against us, even then, love is stronger than hate. Sam, it just sometimes takes longer to win." Sam considered this, then nodded. "I love you, Ma." The word stopped Clara's heart. Ma, not Mrs. Clara, Ma. "I love you too, son," she whispered, kissing his forehead. In their bedroom, she found Eli standing at the window, watching the stars. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "He called me Ma." "I heard." Eli turned in her arms. "You are, in every way that matters, and you're his father." "Am I?" The doubt in Eli's voice broke her heart. "A gunslinger for a father? A protector, a teacher, a man who stands up for what's right even when it costs him." Clara cupped his face. "Yes, Eli Danner, you're his father, and a damn good one." He kissed her then, pouring all his love and fear and hope into it. When they parted, he said, "Whatever comes, we protect him. We protect each other. Always," Clara promised. Outside, a wind rose from the prairie, carrying the scent of sage and possibility. The future remained uncertain. Powerful men still plotted against them. The town was divided. Wade Garrison lurked somewhere in the shadows. But in this house, love had taken root. A gunslinger, a widow, and an orphan boy had become a family. They'd faced violence and emerged stronger. They'd confronted hypocrisy with truth. They'd chosen hope over fear. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, they were together. Tonight, they were home. And somewhere in the vast prairie sky, The stars seemed to shine a little brighter, blessing this unlikely family with their ancient light. Love had won, against all odds. It always did, in the end. The silence that had once haunted this prairie had been filled with laughter, with purpose, with the fierce devotion of hearts that had found their match. The widow who'd thought herself incapable of love, the gunslinger who'd believed redemption beyond reach, the boy who'd never known a true home. Together, they'd written a new story on the wide canvas of the West, not a tale of violence and loss, but of healing and hope, of three broken people who'd found in each other the missing pieces of their souls. The prairie wind sang its approval, and in the small ranch house, three hearts beat as one, ready for whatever dawn might bring. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope Clara and Eli's journey touched your heart as much as it touched mine. Where are you listening to this story from? Please comment below and let's connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts about Clara and Eli's romance. Did you believe in their love? What was your favorite moment? I'd love to hear from you.